Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
What are we going to do about emoji-shaped floor pillows, especially the poop emoji? This is out of control.
And Brandan Schultz.
Seahawks fans should not call that a Fail Mary game. We won. How is that a fail?
Go Hawks!
Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandan Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
You know what time it is, Brandan? It's playoff time.
Playoff time.
Yeah, a road playoff game. Heading to Atlanta. Ready to like break that whole thing down for you guys.
Yeah, hopefully we're all embracing the role of being that team. Well, one of maybe two teams that every other fan base is just rooting against. And I know Adam's already embraced the role of the heel with some of his comments in our discussion with the UK Seahawkers earlier this week. So I think this is going to be good.
Wait, how did I embrace the role of the heel?
Any Falcons fan who listened to you and your comments about Matt Ryan, you've added fuel to their sports hatred of the Seahawks for sure.
Oh, well, sorry to offend them with my truthiness.
Well, they're probably used to Matt Ryan losing in the playoffs anyway.
Yeah, exactly. They think it's normal. Like, so that's on them at that point, you know?
Well, we are going to get into the Falcons game. There's a couple plays I wanted to go back to in the Lions game and look at that because I think there's an important piece of history that we skipped over in our discussion with the UK Seahawkers earlier this week.
Okay.
And we'll talk about the Falcons game. There's a couple different aspects I want to tackle this from, Adam, because one, I want to go back into our history of going on the road in playoff games and talk a little bit about that. And then I also want to talk about some of the personnel differences for the Seahawks from the first Atlanta game to this one, because it's pretty drastic when I went back and really looked at it.
Okay. Sounds like a plan, man. So, all right. So what's on your mind about the Lions game? Because I felt like we had a pretty in-depth conversation with the blokes from the other side of the pond there. So what's been sticking with you, man? Because it's something obviously like we didn't talk about that you feel like we got to get to.
I feel like we didn't significantly cover the defense well enough because I thought keeping a playoff team out of the end zone, that's no small feat. And maybe we just didn't give our Seahawks defense quite enough credit. You know, we talked about the drops by the Lions, but still for a defense to do that, to keep an offensive juggernaut like the Lions and Matt Stafford, who, you know, we talked about it as a chucker, but, you know, they have really good receivers in Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. And we kept that team out of the end zone, limited to 2 field goals. Pretty impressive performance by the defense.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, they did play a whale of a game and got the ball back to the offense with, consistency throughout the beginning of the game. You know, especially when the offense was struggling. And I thought that was a big part of the Seahawks success in that game. And I mean, just Bobby Wagner's play was off the charts. I mean, he was everywhere. Basically Sherman had an amazing game, but you'd never know it because when he has an amazing game, you don't hear about it because he's just shut somebody down the entire game. Stafford was terrified of him. And really, the defensive line got after Stafford a little bit, and between Averill and Bennett and Clark, I mean, they really did bring their A game. And yeah, they played a very well-rounded defensive game. And in fact, if we weren't so used to the Seahawks defense being dominant, we probably would have made a bigger deal out of it.
It's kind of one of those things where when they just meet expectations, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Again, they set the bar there. I mean, that's not our fault, you know? So those are the expectations they've given us. And I don't know that I feel ungrateful, like when they do their thing. Like, I'm just like, yeah, all right. Awesome defense. Again. All right. Good job. Now, but that's what you're supposed to do. So what's next? You know?
Well, and one other guy I really wanted to give some extra credit to, and someone who he finally hit maybe that bar of high expectations that we set for him coming into this season with Thomas Rawls. Thomas Rawls had a whale of a game, breaking the Seahawks all-time playoff record by rushing for 161 yards. And when you have guys that come before you like Sean Alexander and Marshawn Lynch to do something like that, to have the most rushing yards of any running back for the Seahawks in the playoffs, that's a huge deal. And part of it came on this 32-yard run by Thomas Rawls.
Russell shotgun snap. He hands it to Rawls. He's got the first down. Bounces outside left. 45 midfield. Gets a block from Russell. Down the far sidelines to the 35-yard line. Holy catfish. Thomas stays down on the ground, very slow to get up. But can you believe it? Russell Wilson, the quarterback, leading his tailback on the far side of the field with a block. And Thomas Rawls picks up about 32 yards and a first down.
Thomas Rawls apparently getting hit in the midsection there that caused him a little bit of slowness getting up. But we got a holy catfish out of Steve Rabel from that call.
Well, yeah, because it was reminiscent of the Beast. I mean, really, Thomas Rawls, he played very much like Marshawn Lynch in that game. I mean, it really did look similar with the ferociousness and the fury and just, bouncing off tacklers, and the yards after contact were really astounding. And if there's anything to make somebody exclaim, holy catfish, that's the type of plays that do it. And it was super cool. And the idea that Thomas Rawls is the all-time leading playoff, single game playoff rusher for the Seahawks, I mean, that speaks to his talent level and why we were so excited about him coming into the season. Why I bet some public humiliation, which is coming shortly, on his performance. And I couldn't have been more impressed. I just wish it could have happened like, say, week 8 on rather than starting now in the wild card round.
Well, for your sake, I mean, as long as we have him strong for the playoffs, that's what matters.
Well, sure, but if this is all about me, okay? Let's make sure we don't lose sight of what's important here, Brandon.
Well, another important play to go back to, just because it was so spectacular, Paul Richardson with the one-handed catch in the end zone to put the team up 7-0.
4th down and goal. The turn, the play fake, the look, the dump over the top, reaching back. Does he make the catch? Flag is down.
But
Paul Richardson makes the catch for a touchdown. Seahawks. Holy mackerel. He had a man in his face. What a catch. One hand reaching around the defender, Wilson. And Paul Richardson interfered with and makes the catch with one hand. And the Seahawks go on top 6-0.
Now, here's the thing about these two plays, Adam. With the Thomas Rawls run, we get a holy catfish. With the Paul Richardson catch, we get a holy mackerel. This is like the start of a fish trifecta, I think.
What's Rabel going to go with next? Like holy sturgeon? Like what's the next thing?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe we need to tweet at or email Steve Rabel with the fish that we want to close out the trifecta of self-censorship with. I
want it to be holy cutthroat. That's what I want, because it both sounds cool, and then it's also kind of like, the nail in the coffin. They're cutting their throats. So I like it.
I kind of want something like, what the brown trout was that?
Yeah, that gets a little blue for sure, but I could get on board with that. Yeah, exactly.
Or here's another call where it would have worked perfectly. To going back to this call, which we really didn't discuss much with the UK Seahawkers, just a spectacular catch by Doug Baldwin.
Russell's going to roll right. Has time, looks, fires, reaching back to make the catch. Doug Baldwin, does he hang on? No. It looked like he reached back and maybe brought it in. He had to pin it to the back of his thighs. Baldwin says he made the catch. Doug did pin it against the bottom of his thigh, and there's the red flag from Pete Carroll. If this stands, what a circus catch this is by Doug Baldwin. I think he did. I think he got his hand underneath it and pinned it to the bottom of his thigh. The problem is it was called incomplete.
After reviewing the play, the ruling on the field has been changed. It is the catch. For Seattle at the 14-yard line on the hash mark closest to the Seattle bench. Seattle is not charged a timeout and a successful challenge.
Man, Doug Baldwin's total just went up now to 87 yards. And listen, if Doug Baldwin tells you that today is Tuesday, you believe it.
You believe it, yeah.
See, I think Rabel missed an opportunity there where he said he pinned it to his upper thigh. You say he get more excited about it. He pinned it to his upper thigh. Holy butterfish.
Oh no! See, you missed your own catchphrase here. I mean, he caught it with his butt, dude. So you call that holy brown trout? Like that's what you do.
Let's get into this Atlanta game. But before we do that, if you're in the area, you really should help represent the 12s at the game. And it looks like there's a lot of tickets under $150, which is great for a playoff game. We need the team to hear us in the stands right from kickoff, help energize them. Go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/tickets and a percentage gets kicked back to the show. It's about 12%. Seahawkerspodcast.com/tickets. Let's make sure they hear us.
Absolutely, man. I want to hear some Seahawks out there, and maybe that will help them kind of get fired up and start the game quickly rather than these slow starts that we've grown so accustomed to.
These slow starts. And I think Daniel in Post Falls, he's kind of getting at this when he says most people don't give the Seahawks much of a chance against the Falcons this week. I know the Seahawks play their best when they are doubted. That being said, Richard Sherman can't do it. Russell Wilson doesn't have what it takes. Plus, he's too short. Bobby Wagner isn't good enough. Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett aren't good enough to get Matt Ryan. The rest of the Seahawks don't stand a chance. I don't think it's possible for them to win.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is going to be an awful game. I mean, I look for the Seahawks to get blown out by 3 scores.
You hear that, Hawks? You're sufficiently doubted. Now get after it.
Yeah, exactly. You stink. Go prove me wrong.
I want to win this game so bad, Adam. I am so tired of the whining from the Falcons fans that I've heard this week. They legitimately believe that they would have won that game earlier this season if Richard Sherman gets called for pass interference. Apparently in their imaginary world, Julio Jones doesn't get called for illegal hands to the face either, but whatever.
Yeah, let's put a pin in that because I want to come back to that later in the show. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. There's been some crybaby catfish stuff going on with the Atlanta Falcons with that. And, and it's funny, too, because the Falcons seem to think that they have our number, that they're such a better team and that they really dominated that game in Seattle. Well, congratulations. You won 1 quarter out of 4. I mean, and I don't know if you knew it, but you dominated the 3rd quarter. And you know what you can't do in the 3rd quarter?
You can't win in the 3rd quarter.
Game. Yeah, you can't win the game in the 3rd quarter. You win the game in the 4th quarter. And look, the Seahawks went out there and they took it away. They absolutely made their adjustments after the Falcons came out hot, shut them down, and made the plays when they needed to. So I'm sorry, you lost fair and square.
And a couple of those touchdowns or big catches were on blown coverages. And
yes,
how many times outside of that Seattle-Atlanta game have we seen that? How many times have we seen that since Cam Chancellor has been back?
Well, that's the entire point, because that was the whole reason Sherman melted down on the sidelines, was the idea that there were communication issues. Was it McCray that was in the game at that time?
Yep.
And that was kind of the bugaboo, and that's why Sherman was so upset. And you've heard it for years. I mean, this isn't just something that we're saying about this game like, oh, well, Cam's in this game when he wasn't last time, so it's going to be fine. Well, no, here's the thing. Cam has been the difference in the communication factor for years, and it's been talked about for years. He's the guy that sets the table for the defensive backs. He really does let everybody know what's going on and help them play on a string. I think that can't be overestimated, his impact. Now, when you say that, maybe it'll be just enough to offset Earl Thomas being out of this game. Because look, let's not lie. If you were to be asked at the beginning of the season, guys, you can't lose, Earl Thomas would have been in your top 3. And the reason why is when you come down to games like this in the postseason, whether you end up playing the Falcons or maybe the Packers down the road, or even the Patriots, maybe in the Super Bowl, or the Steelers. So that, because he's the big eraser back there. This is going to be a big test. But let's not lie about that. It still will be a big test. But I think the idea is that the Seahawks have always been good about not giving up huge plays. And with Cam in the game, it will keep those communication errors from being allowed and keep everything in front of them and make the Falcons earn every trip down the field. And anytime you have to convert 3 or 4 third downs, it gets difficult on an offense.
I want to go back to Earl Thomas, because initially I thought this was going to be a big deal in terms of Area 29. And And after looking at it, I think that having Cam in this game against the Falcons is actually a little bit more important. I'd like them both, obviously, but I think that if Cam is in that game in week 6 against the Falcons, I think the Seahawks have a much better game. And when I looked at the statistics for Matt Ryan, he's attempted 28 passes over the entire season toward the deep middle part of the field. That's less than 5% of all their plays. He averages 35 attempts per game. So let's round up to 40. And, maybe with the thought that the run game won't work against the Seahawks. And so 5% of that's 2 passes. 2 passes to the deep middle in one game is what that would work out to.
Sure.
So do we think that having Stephen Terrell in there versus Earl Thomas is going to make that much of a difference when you think about how few times that Matt Ryan really tests the middle of the field?
Well, I think it's interesting because Dan Quinn is no dummy, and he knows the Seahawks defense inside and out, obviously. And I think when you bring up those statistics, which are very interesting, I think that could be a way that the Falcons go with some tendency breakers, because that's something you see in every playoff game. Okay, this team tends to do this, tends to do that. And then they have a few things that they do that are outside of their normal game flow. And I think that's one way that they could do that to break some tendencies going down the stretch. Now, with that said, Stephen Terrell's played pretty darn well back there. I mean, I think I said with the UK guys, he's done about an 85% impersonation of Earl Thomas, which is amazing. Like when I say that, that's not in a degrading way at all. Like that is amazing that he could even come close to that. So yeah, I think that makes a big difference. Now, as far as it being more important having Cam than Earl, I really feel like it's a wash. And that's why I feel okay about it, in the sense that we won without Cam and we can win without Earl. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There's going to be some things that happen that maybe normally wouldn't. For example, like the Seahawks have yet to have an interception since Earl Thomas broke his leg. Let's hope that changes along the way.
We're due. I mean, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of it's going to depend if Matt Ryan decides he's going to test Sherman much, and then is Sherman going to shadow Julio Jones? I mean, because in the first matchup in Seattle, I believe the passer rating to Julio when Sherman was on him was somewhere in the 40s.
Yeah.
And then, it was very high when it was against everybody else. And that's, again, because they started moving him around in the third quarter and there was those communication issues.
Well, and I don't think the Seahawks defense is ever going to go man straight up with Sherman on Julio, because Atlanta's going to try and do things to try and, like you said, Dan Quinn knows the Seahawks defense. He knows how to maneuver the offense to get Julio in position to be able to catch the ball on some other defensive back other than Richard Sherman.
And the little trick that they used in the third quarter was they brought out 3 tight ends.
Right.
And so you bring out the 3 tight ends. It makes it look like a very run-heavy formation. And then you start running little crossing routes and pick plays and things like that out of that. And that's how guys like that tight end, I still don't remember his name because I don't know that he ever caught a ball since then, ends up, going for a long touchdown. And, Julio ends up scoring on a very similar play out of a very similar formation. So, that was their one little trick that they used to get back in that game. And once the Seahawks figured it out, it took them a quarter, which I think that's a pretty good learning curve. That it's not like it took them 2 weeks or something. And once they figured that out, then it was shut down yet again. Because the thing is Kyle Shanahan isn't exactly the most creative play caller on the planet. I know he's getting so much shine right now from the national media and all that. I have watched him run many an offense into the ground. And I'm not a big believer in him as a play caller. And so with that said, I really feel like Chris Richard has the advantage when you start looking at that coordinator matchup there.
Well, and I think a big part of the shine going Shanahan's way is all because of just the tremendous number of points the Falcons have put up this year. And we've talked about it before. They play in the defense optional NFC South. So that's a big part of it too. But they've put up points on a lot of teams this year.
Yeah. And I mean, in 6 of those games, we were against NFC South opponents and where they put up a lot of points. And the thing is, the Seahawks, while maybe not the number 1 team in scoring this year, was still number 3. And I think that's a huge factor when you look at this. I mean, everybody looks at that offense versus defense matchup, right? The Atlanta offense versus the Seahawks defense, because those are the stars. Those are the heavy hitters for the most part. What a lot of people aren't looking at is the Seattle Seahawks offense versus the Atlanta defense, because it's the less sexy matchup. Yet I feel like that Atlanta offense, Seahawks defense very well could play themselves to a virtual draw, so to speak. And so the real difference is going to be which one of those lesser units dominates the other. And when you start looking at that Atlanta defense, it is suspect to say the least.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier this week about their run game, the fact that they tend to give up more yards per rush at home versus on the road. I mean, that really plays well into the Seahawks' favor, because they're going to look to establish the run against this Falcons team. They want to limit the number of possessions by Matt Ryan, and that whole team felt what it was like to get back to Seahawks football last week. And I think they really want to hold on to that feeling through the playoffs.
Oh, without question. And I think the running game could really be exerted in this game as well. When you look at some of the things that the Falcons do now, I mean, we're just going to talk their overall performance against the run, not just their performance at home, which, like you said, is markedly better than on the road. But if you look at all of their games, they're still 25th in the league at yards per attempt. When it comes to defending
worse at
the
home
rush
than they are on the road.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're even worse. So, I mean, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt of their road.
And looking at their overall performance. Yeah, 25.
Exactly. They're also, there's two other things that I think are huge. I mean, when we think about the Seahawks offense, we think about third down conversions. That they've been, a middling team when it comes to third down conversions. The Seahawks have all season long. Well, the Falcons are 26th in the league at stopping their opponents on third down. The other thing that we talk a lot about is red zone efficiency when it comes to the Seahawks offense. We've settled for a lot of field goals or even missed field goals. Well, again, this is where the Falcons defense has slumped throughout the majority of the season. They're 23rd in the league at stopping the opposing offense and scoring efficiency. So, I mean, the things that we are weakest at as an offense, the things that we have the most concerned about, the Falcons aren't good at stopping. So that gives the Seahawks a really big opportunity to overcome some of their issues on the road in the national spotlight, where everybody and their dog is picking the Falcons, and it's not even close.
Well, let's talk about one reason why. And when you look at the Seahawks' history in the playoffs, it's easy to see why a lot of people would be interested in taking the home team, because, I mean, the Seahawks are 2-3 under Pete Carroll in the divisional round. And those 3 losses, those were road losses, right? I mean, it feels like this team has done it all under Pete Carroll, Adam, but they've never won on the road to advance to a championship game. So this is the first time they have the opportunity to do that. This is also the first time that they've come into the playoffs as winning their division and then having to go on the road. So it's a little bit different than in past years where they've come in as a wild card and had to play in back-to-back road games. So I look back at the history of these teams, and that Pete Carroll history of going on the road I take that back, because really the first year that Pete Carroll coached this team, they did get a home game. They got the home game against the New Orleans Saints, and then they went on the road to Chicago. Now, I kind of strike that one out because, they won the division at 7-9.
And it was Pete Carroll's first year, too. I mean, they're just getting started.
Yeah, and it was the 2010 season with Matt Hasselbeck at quarterback, but they go on the road, and they were down 28-0 in the third quarter on the road against Chicago before they even got their first points of the game. Mm-hmm. And that trend continued, throughout the Seahawks playoff history going on the road. 2012, down 14-0 in the second quarter against the Redskins. Mm-hmm. And then that game right after that is the one we know that's been talked about all week long, down 20-0 in the third quarter against Atlanta. And then last year, down 9-0 in the fourth quarter versus the Vikings. And then they go to Carolina, where they're down 28-0 going into the third quarter there. So, the crazy thing is that as bad as some of those were, they never lost by more than 11 points. And any of the games that they kept within 2 scores, they were able to win those games it just makes me wonder, are they going to be able to get out to a quicker start than in seasons past?
In a word, no. But I guess at the same time, when you do rattle off all those games and you realize that it's about a 50-50 prospect that they win those games, when you go down a score or two, don't hang your head. Like that's okay. Because part of it too is, especially for say like these divisional games where you're going into somebody else's house and it's their first playoff game of that year, and they've obviously had a successful year to have either a 1 or a 2 seed. They are so fired up. The crowd is so fired up. You have to basically take that first wave of energy from the other team, and you just have to weather that storm. And basically it lasts about a quarter and a half. That's usually how that goes. If you can weather that storm and not be down by, if you can be down by 2 scores or less within that, you have an excellent chance of winning that game. Because once you come off that emotional high, teams tend to, come back down to earth and struggle a little bit. One other thing that, everybody's going back to the Atlanta playoff game in which we lost in the last seconds, but that's not the last time we played in Atlanta. The last time we played in Atlanta, we drubbed them 33-10.
Yeah.
So it's not like we can't win there with this iteration of players in this, against that iteration of players in the Atlanta Falcons. I understand there's a few different players and the coaching's a little different and all that. But the idea is that we know what it takes to win there in this day and age. And so they're not going to be scared. Like we know that. And, the other thing that I wanted to kind of point out, Brandon, and maybe get your thoughts on a little bit is I don't know how many times we've seen in the playoffs the matchup between the prolific offense and the great defense. What happens during those matchups, Brandon?
Generally, the defense wins.
Generally, or almost like every single fucking time?
Almost like every time.
Yeah. And that's what I'm getting at, man. Like, and I love it because the offensive team is always so overconfident in that offense. And it makes it tough. It makes it tough at the end of the day for them when you start hitting them in the mouth a little bit. And let's not forget the amount of pressure that the Seahawks got on Matt Ryan in the game at CenturyLink earlier this year. Mm-hmm. They battered him for the first half. I mean, absolutely bruised him. And I know everybody talks about this Falcons offensive line as if it's, the Berlin Wall and it's impenetrable. But I mean, the sacks can be had against these guys. It happens. We did it.
Oh, absolutely. And I could, going back and looking at some of the personnel from that game earlier this year to the personnel right now, I can make the argument that this Seattle team is better on both sides of the ball. Even without Earl Thomas, I think that this team is better than when we played the Falcons.
Absolutely. Just think about some of the personnel that is coming back for this game that we didn't have in the last. I mean, you talk about Frank Clark playing. You talk about Cam Chancellor playing. You talk about Michael Bennett, who missed part of the game against the Falcons, being in there for this game. The idea that CJ Prosise is going to play, mark my words, he is going to play.
I don't know
how much, but he's playing. There's no doubt about that.
You have Mike Moore, even lesser well-known players, Mike Morgan, who Kevin Pierre-Louis, that was one game that he started because of Mike Morgan being out at linebacker. I don't expect Mike Morgan to play a whole lot, just like he didn't play a whole lot last game. But, there's one name. You have Marcel Reese now, who's an upgrade over Will Tukuafu. You have, you mentioned CJ Prosise, and CJ Spiller had a couple of drops in that game against Atlanta.
So we upgraded CJs is what you're saying.
We did upgrade CJs. Who we also upgraded is Russell Wilson. I mean, Russell Wilson, where read option is an option versus hobbled Russell Wilson, who is 3 weeks removed from an ankle injury that probably should have taken him out of commission through that week. If he were any other quarterback.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think he had the knee sprain by that point too, because it was week 6 that we took on the Falcons.
Right. Yeah. It was the ankle injury in week 1 and then the knee sprain in week 3, I think.
Right. I mean, he couldn't move for a solid 5-6 weeks. And so that's one of those things. I mean, nobody is talking about that factor in this game. What a healthy Russell Wilson means. I mean, in the offense, still put up points. Right. When Russell Wilson was hobbled. And when that offensive line was, even worse than it is now. Like, I mean, the offensive line was far worse back at the early stages of the season than it is now. So you talk about an improved offensive line with a healthy Russell Wilson, with all of those players that you mentioned coming back.
Who we can't gloss over, though, Thomas Rawls instead of Kristen Michael.
Oh, man.
I mean, Kristen Michael was our leading rusher in the regular season, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, geez, you should kick me off the podcast right now for that, man. Because, I mean, that can't be understated at all either.
And then you had Stephen Hauschka, who missed a field goal and an extra point in that game. There's 4 points off of the score that you could tack on.
That's still possible. That's still out there for this game.
It's still possible.
That could still happen. Oh, and you forgot to mention our upgrade at long snapper.
Yeah, Tyler Ott, clear long upgrade at long snapper.
Man, so he ought to make a huge difference. That's what I think.
The one position though that I want to talk about, George Fant versus Bradley Sowell. That's one difference on the offensive line. And when you think about
other than name,
but where's your concern in terms of Vic Beasley, who against George Fant?
Very, very high.
Because we had some listeners point out the fact that Vic Beasley didn't do much of anything in that first game, but there's also this difference in personnel.
There's difference in personnel, and Vic Beasley also isn't this his second year? So I feel like the light really went on for him about halfway through the season. That's when he really went on a tear. So I think that's something to be said there too. Yeah, I'm very concerned about Vic Beasley in any of the Atlanta pass rushers going up against George Fant. I mean, Ziggy Ansah made Fant look so poor in the last game, and he really does struggle against some of the better talent in pass rushers, which is, again, it's understandable. When I rag on Fant, please understand that, like, I like Fant the dude. Like, I get, and he's doing everything he can. He did not ask for this.
No, he was not the first option. I mean,
no.
Go back to the offseason, and when you're looking to re-sign possibly Russell Okung, and then you go to your backup, which is now playing right tackle versus left tackle. And then you have Sowell, who you brought in as kind of, to play probably most likely a backup role. And then you have Fant in there just as a development guy. Yeah. He was not expected to start this year.
Yeah. And you kept the wrong veteran offensive lineman in Webb over Jari Evans.
Right.
I mean, just think about what a difference that could have been if maybe they had kept Jari Evans. Now you have Ifedi at right tackle. Now you have Gilliam at left tackle. And I mean, I understand Gilliam isn't going to be a franchise left tackle, but he is an upgrade over Fant.
Yeah.
I mean, because right now he is the weakest link. Goodbye. Like, I mean, that's it. I mean, he really is
understandable.
Yeah. Again, I'm not trying to crush the man. I know he's doing very well in the sense that, I mean, he's a total novice when it comes to doing it. Like, I get it. I mean, it's like that. Remember that TV show Pros versus Joes?
Yeah.
And like they bring out like some retired Herschel Walker against some guy that runs like triathlons, and dude's like super fit and like fairly athletic, like a regular guy, and that tries hard. And then you see him go up against a retired athlete, and you go, "Oh, that's the difference." I mean, that's more or less what you're seeing here. It's Pros versus Joes when it comes to George Fant right now. But with that said, though, still, I mean, we talk about that Falcons defense versus the Seahawks offense, and I feel like, again, the Seahawks defense and the Atlanta offense are both tops in the league in their respective categories, whereas the Seahawks offense is a middling team. They're about, middle of the pack in most things, and the Atlanta defense is near the bottom of the pack in most things. So, in theory, if you're just looking at the stats and the eyeball test and the talent level, the Seahawks offense has the advantage there.
Another place where I think they have the advantage, I think the Seahawks are in the Falcons' head. I listened to Vic Beasley on his call with Seattle reporters earlier this week. He talked about how he hates chasing down and chasing after mobile quarterbacks. Russell Wilson's already in his head. Beasley would rather have a guy who sits in the pocket so he knows where he has to go. Richard Sherman's already in this team's head. Julio Jones said on said the ESPN reporter this week that if Sherman's being physical early on in this game, he's going to go crying to the officials. So you have a couple instances where the guys are already, I love and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but Jack Nicklaus, the golfer, talked about how he knew when his opponents were complaining about a particular golf course that he knew he had already had them beat because the course they were already thinking about how they disliked playing that particular course. And he saw that as an advantage. If you're thinking about something you dislike before you even get to the game, then you're playing at a disadvantage already.
And you don't think that Pete Carroll's already in Dan Quinn's head? I mean, because basically when you're looking up at your protege and being like, okay, now I'm taking you on in the playoffs, to try to advance further. I mean, that's a big thing right there too. I mean, there's a little bit of that daddy issue thing, that kind of, I think plays out no matter how confident you are in yourself and all of that, like that is there in the back of your head, So, I mean, the fact that both these teams are so familiar with each other, in a coaching standpoint. And the other thing too, is think about this in these terms, when it comes to the familiarity between coaches, think of all of the Seattle coaches know Dan Quinn.
Oh yeah.
Basically one Atlanta coach knows the Seattle coaches. Just Dan Quinn. Mm-hmm. So there's a bigger advantage right there too.
No, I would agree. And one other thing that I wanted to point out before we go to break, go to the second half of the show, I think there's a magic number here, and that is fewer than 30 points. The Atlanta Falcons have scored 30 points or less 6 times this season. And in those games, 30 points or less, they're 1-5.
Wow.
31. If they score 31 points, they're undefeated, 10-0.
Okay. I did not know that stat. And your magic number is, I think that's spot on, man. That's good work by you. I'm very impressed, Brandon. You said you were fired up to do this pod today.
I was fired up to do this.
Your preparation was high today, man. I'm very impressed by you today.
Separation in the preparation. And yes. That leaves you with the question, though, Adam. Can this Seahawks team score 30 plus against the Falcons?
Yeah. Oh, without question. Yeah, it's in their DNA. They can do it. It's a matter of no turnovers and limiting the sacks.
Can they have that same kind of focus, that laser focus that they went into the Patriots game with, and to be able to win on the road? Because we haven't seen that elsewhere when they've gone on the road this year.
No, but again, think about it in the terms that when the Seahawks went and played the Patriots, was that a big primetime game?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was. See, when they went to Tampa Bay, was that a big primetime game?
No. New Orleans, no.
No, it wasn't. These Seahawks definitely play up and down to the level of their opponent. That is definitely a part of their DNA. So I think there's going to be a large factor in that too. I feel good about this game. I really do.
I feel a lot better than I did initially after going back and looking at some of these things. It's just, to me, it's my one concern is how many points does the home team Falcons put up before the Seahawks respond? Can the Seahawks even get on the board first, maybe, for a change? Mm-hmm. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, and there is that possibility that they come out and they steal Atlanta's lunch money right out of the gate. I mean, if you come out and punch them right in the mouth right out of the gate, I mean, that really does, put a stamp on the game and makes it very difficult for the home team to recover mentally. There is a lot to be said for that. No doubt about it.
But I would expect Atlanta to really focus on stopping the run initially, because the worst thing that could happen to Atlanta is if the Seahawks come in and do what they did to Detroit, and they waited till the third drive to do it. But if they came out right away, ran the ball 9 times and just in a row and scored a touchdown on a drive, that takes the wind right out of their sails early on.
It does. The one advantage I'd give Atlanta when it comes to stopping the run over top of what the Lions do, the Lions play a lot of 2 deep safety.
Yeah.
And, left 7 in the box. Basically, they play single high safety, much like the Seahawks do. I mean, it's basically the same scheme. It's Dan Quinn's scheme.
Yeah, Keanu Neal is really good.
Yeah, and they drop him into the box, right. And he's like Cam Chancellor. And let's not forget, Cam Chancellor was giving Neal advice as he was drafted this year in the offseason. Yeah. And we praised him for it, right?
Right.
So let's hope that he didn't give him all the secrets. You know what I mean?
Well, they could prepare for that. The Seahawks offense gets to practice against the real Cam Chancellor every week.
Well, another thing we forgot to bring up here too, Brandon, when we're talking about Atlanta secondary and differences in this game. We all are a fan of the Trufants.
Yeah,
no doubt
Desmond
about
Trufant, not back there.
Not back there. And
He's that's a difference
corner.
maker. He is a shutdown corner type of player.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about the idea we have Earl out, well, they're missing Trufant too.
Yeah.
So that's another big thing right there. And not only that, but also take into consideration, the Falcons have been sitting and reading all their press clippings for the past week, man, as NFL Network and ESPN and everybody on God's green earth blows smoke up their ass, man. It's been all week long. And these tired, old, former champions just can't get it done. I mean, that's the narrative I've heard all week long. I love it, man. It sets up perfectly.
I love seeing our team doubted, especially going up against a team like this and a defense like this, where I think they do have the opportunity to hang 30 points on this defense. I just want to see them get started a little bit sooner.
I would too. The two paper tigers, when I looked at the playoffs this year, to me, were Atlanta and Dallas. Those were the two biggest paper tigers to me, in the sense that I've never believed in Dallas's defense all year, and the idea that they have two rookies really bothers me, and leaning on them as your playmakers, and they have very little playoff experience. And then I've always been down in Atlanta for a number of reasons, and I mean I've gone into that multiple times
Mostly
on
Matt
the show. But yeah, Matt Ryan's a big part of it. And look, at the end of the day, when the Seahawks beat the Falcons this upcoming Saturday, and the Packers do beat Dallas, because I honestly believe the Packers are going to beat Dallas. Am I going to hang out here for a couple days, and are you going to drive out? Are we going to the game in the Clink?
I was going to save this for the second half of the show, but we can get into this now. And I don't know if this is necessarily a hot take, but there's been some debate this week surrounding the idea of do you want the red hot Packers at home, or do you want to go on the road against the Cowboys, who lost a pair game to the Giants and lost the final game where they were just screwing around against the Eagles and putting in their backups and that sort of thing? Which one do you want?
Well, all right. So let me preface what I'm about to say with this. It is no slam dunk we win this game, and I am not just glossing over the Falcons, okay? There's still very much.
I thought I heard you say when we win this game.
Right. Yeah, I know, because I mean it's set up nice, but to the gods, I'm giving a nod to the football gods right now.
Okay.
Yeah, just let them know. I understand there is definitely a game yet to play, and there is a possibility we lose. Absolutely, without question. But if we're fortunate enough to win this game, I want whatever team comes to Seattle, and that happens to be the Packers if they win.
Yeah.
I would much rather have a home game, and I don't care much who it's against.
I want a home game too.
Yeah. At that point. Now, as far as Aaron Rodgers being terrifying right now, yep. he is terrifying right now. And that scares the holy hell out of me. It also scares the holy hell out of me, the idea that the Cowboys could just play keep away for an entire game.
Yeah.
So in Jerry world on top of that, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, but I think what it boils down to in the playoffs, what we've seen with the Seahawks team, home games matter.
Yes, I agree. And like you, I have that feeling that as long as we're in an NFC championship game, I will count my blessings next week.
Yes. Yep. One way or the other. I mean, to have been in the NFC championship game basically 3 out of the last 4 years.
Yeah.
That'd be quite the accomplishment.
Well, Adam, with that, what do you say we get into the second half of the show?
Dude, let's do it.
Getting into the second half of the show, and now is as good a time as any to join the Seahawkers clubs, any of the Seahawker chapters. We have our Georgia Seahawkers setting things up for us. For those that are going to be in the area, there's a Seahawkers playoff rally there at Stats Friday evening. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern. And so definitely get in the clubs. If you're going to be in that area, check out the Facebook page for the Georgia Seahawkers, the Atlanta Seahawks fans. Find out where that rally is Friday night if you want to go to it. And then they're also going to be tailgating on Saturday. So lots of stuff going on the road. And then if you go to Seahawks.com, there's even some stuff going on here around the Seattle area. So lots of stuff to check out. While we're in the playoffs, enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm going to make a sound here. And this is my breaking news sounder. Wade Phillips hired as the Rams defensive coordinator as of 10 minutes ago, Brandon.
Wow, Wade Phillips. Well, that at least gives them some experience at head coach or in the coaching arena, because their coach that they hired, the dude from
Redskins offensive coordinator,
yeah.
Some dude I'd never heard of.
But
made Kirk Cousins look good, so I'll give him some credit.
He's younger than my younger brother.
That now you're starting to feel old, aren't you? But I mean, let me ask you straight up. So always as a fan, of the opposing team, when you hear news, when you hear Wade Phillips hired as defensive coordinator of the Rams, what do you think?
It's fine. I mean, Greg Williams is, I don't know if their defense is any more scary with Wade Phillips.
Big time.
You think?
Oh, big time. Wade Phillips is a way better defensive coordinator than Greg Williams.
No, I would. Well, okay. But they still have the same players that still scare me.
Well, yeah. And then you pair that with excellent coaching. Wade Phillips is a fantastic defensive coordinator, not a great head coach. And I think he's actually a really good dude too, but a fantastic defensive coordinator. I have no idea how Denver let him go. It makes no sense to me to hire some dude as head coach of the Broncos that led an underachieving defense in Miami all year. Like, I don't get that hire for the life of me, but best of luck, Broncos, with Vance Joseph. But the Wade Phillips hiring, like, I'm not stoked. I'm not stoked about that.
Part of me, though, is glad. I'm glad it's Wade Phillips and not Gus Bradley.
Yeah, me too. Where does Gus Bradley land, I wonder?
He's interviewing with the Skins, too. That could be where he ends up.
Okay, that'd be a good fit for him.
Yeah. Or maybe in Miami, since they lost their
That'd be a great fit for him.
Yeah.
He'd get the most out of Byron Maxwell again.
Yeah. Yeah. And pair him up with Adam Gase.
Ooh, that'd be a formidable coaching staff.
I think so. Well, Adam, what do you say we get into our new members of the flock? Because we have a big segment this week of new members. This is cool.
You guys are awesome. Look, we've tried a few different tactics about getting people in the flock. We've tried incentives. We've tried, again, different emotional tactics and everything. But if there's one thing I know, is that guilt apparently is the best motivator for everybody on the planet. Like, it really is. And I almost feel a little bad. Like, I'm now guilty. Yeah.
You should feel a little bit guilty because you were driving the guilt train this last week.
Yeah. Pack your bags. You just went on a guilt trip for sure.
Well, welcome to the flock. Let's start off with John Edelman. He sent in a one-time $12 donation, said, I was going to get in the flock after we won the Super Bowl, as I have two things that I thought would be good topics for the show to go through the off season, but I decided to do it now. I would only ask that after we are done celebrating our new Super Bowl victory, you consider using a show or part of a show over the off season to talk about how we can replace the travesty green uniform with the original jerseys. And why is John L. Williams not in the Ring of Honor, and what can be done to get him in? Keep up the great work. Thanks, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks, man. Yeah, absolutely. Now, just those are two great topics that I think we will most definitely cover. Secondly, you don't have to make a donation to like send in topics you want us to talk about. You can just email us, dude. Like, I mean, we're appreciative, that it's great, but
the bigger donation, the stronger we'll consider them for the offseason.
Will we? Oh, you got to pay to play?
Well, no, I'm just saying it gives more weight to it, I think.
Does it?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we done driving the guilt train all of a sudden?
This is starting to sound like Playola, man.
John says, don't forget to touch base about Kenny Easley's chance at the Hall of Fame. He was my favorite player when I was a kid, and every little bit of buzz helps. I'm already counting him in.
Oh, God, if Kenny Easley doesn't make the Hall of Fame, seriously, they need to burn down the Hall of Fame. I mean, how is Kenny Easley not in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah. And he's the only guy for the seniors members to consider, or the senior committee to consider.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of that.
No,
but even if there was competition, I mean, like
right.
Kenny Easley, like, yeah, I mean, that's duh. That's just a no-brainer.
Yeah. One-time donation from Russell Cox. Welcome to the flock, Russell. And also we had a $6 a month pledge from Christian Shesham. Says, hey there, guys. I finally got my catfish together and got in the flock. I have been freeloading for some time now, thinking that, quote, I have to become a real listener soon. The time is now. Being from Norway, I don't get too much Seahawks stuff on a regular basis, but your podcast is the highlight of my week. Keep up the good work. Go Hawks, from Christian.
Oh, you bet, man. I appreciate it a ton, and it'll be cool because $6 gets you in the Ring of Honor Facebook page, right?
Yeah. We'll have another member of the Active 53.
Exactly. So welcome, my friend. That's super cool.
Welcome, Christian. Also, welcome to the flock to Joe Coe, Jay Levias Sr., and also welcome to the flock to David Ulrich. And he sent in a note, said, I've been listening for about a month and have loved every minute of it. Last episode, you chatted with William Cornell, and after seeing his first episode, I had to binge the rest. Happy to join the flock and can't wait to hear you guys go in depth on how our Hawks put an end to the Lions season. Go Hawks.
All right. Go Hawks, man. Well, welcome to the flock and welcome to the show. I mean, just listening for a month or so, we always appreciate the new listeners. No doubt about it.
Absolutely. And run down our folks that are in for $1 a month, getting a sticker and an official member of the flock. Welcome to the flock to Marcus McVeigh, to Anders Rawgard, and to Christopher Yoon. Also, welcome to the flock to Matt Robson, and a welcome to the flock to Terry Burmis.
Wow, man. You guys really did step up this week, but it's not good enough. For those of you who still haven't done it, I hope like your gut's turning a little bit because all of these other people were like, stepped up to the plate and were like, all right, like this is a value for value thing. You bring a lot of value to my life. I'm gonna just pitch in $1 a month. I mean, heck, I spend more than that on chewing gum every month. I might as well give them $1 a month. And so these other people like showing you up, and man, I guess the real listeners are doing a better job than you. So I don't know if that makes you feel guilty or anything, but
see what you've done. All the new members of the flock have encouraged you, Adam, to keep piling it on.
Here's what I really want to say. Brandan, is that when people do this sort of thing, it blows both of us away. I know it blows you away every bit as much as me. And kind of the idea when we do ask for you guys to get in the flock and donate to the show is the idea that it'd be really great to turn this into something to where we have to spend less time at real jobs so that we can focus more on this show and do far more preparation. Like, for example, today, I worked 13 hours today and was up at 4 a.m. We're still doing the show, but I didn't have much time to do preparation. So I felt underprepared for the show, and I feel like I could have given you a better show if I had to do less of that. So the idea is that neither one of us have the illusions that Brandon's going to be able to stop slaving away for the government, and I'm going to be able to stop, traveling around working in these mills. But the idea is that maybe we are able to make this not like, say, a secondary income, because that would still be a lot, but more like a third income. So like a thirdendary income.
Thirdendary.
Yeah.
I like the new word.
Yeah. So that's kind of our goal. So if you can help us make this a thirdendary income, I promise you, with the extra time that you supply us, we will always bring you a better product at the end of the day.
And see how I look at it, Adam. All these people that got in the flock this month, this was just their New Year's resolution. And now they can already check off that box of New Year's resolution accomplished. Check box, join the flock, just check mark off, and you're clear through the entire year now.
Yeah, you can change your Facebook status to feeling accomplished at that point.
Absolutely. All right, Adam, what do you say we move on to do better at life? I know we got some emails this week, but maybe we'll put those out as a bonus tomorrow. I know you got the day off. And I did skip over some things that some Russell Wilson things I wanted to talk about too, so that would be good for a bonus. So
yeah, I would enjoy doing that because there were some good emails. We're just running a little long this week. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do that as a bonus tomorrow.
Yeah, not so much long, but just so much as you need to go to sleep.
That's what I meant by running long.
I'm just saying, people are looking at their phones right now going, well, geez, they're only an hour into the show. Normally they do 90 minutes, but.
Right. Right. Well, I think the first thing Brandan says to me when I turn on the Skype video cam is, good Lord, you look tired, which is code for you look like catfish.
And I think we're going to have to, we have a new drop. We can not only catfish things now, but we can mackerel things.
I'm in on this. I'm in on the mackerel. Yeah.
Well, let's get into Do Better. I'm going to kick us off, Adam. My Do Better this week is for Roseville, Michigan, Police Chief James Berlin. And I don't know if you saw the story, Adam, that was circulating on Facebook. It was widely reported that a Michigan resident was ticketed for leaving his car running so it could warm up. He came to pick up his girlfriend and his 2-year-old and her 2-year-old and left the car running in the driveway. He came back and he had a ticket on his windshield for allowing his car to run in the freezing weather.
That's a ticketable offense.
Well, here's the thing. It's not against the law to leave your car running. And he posted the ticket and pretty much went off on Facebook. It got circulated around. And apparently the Roseville police chief, James Berlin, who I mentioned, he said that he was citing the car theft was a public safety concern. And that's why he said, quote, I encourage our officers to write this ticket. All it takes is someone to hop in this car and take off. And then there's a chase, often at a high rate of speed, and all that could have been prevented. But he's also he's warming up the car for a 2-year-old to get in the car. Like, I just don't understand. Like, this is like going around and having police officers test unlocked doors for residents who aren't home and then leaving them a ticket because they left their house unlocked because it would make it easy for burglars to break in. Like, we're ticketing people now for things that might be able to happen because of some action you take. This is becoming Minority Report.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. We're like 2 steps away from, Tom Cruise and Minority Report. That's ridiculous, man. I mean, it's just a necessity of life. Like, clearly, James Berlin is a mackerel.
I'm not going that far, but James Berlin does need to do better.
Do better for sure. All right, man. Quick honorary do better is for all you Washingtonians that have no clue how to drive in the snow. Like, it snowed like 3 inches yesterday.
It's not their fault. They don't own snowplows in that state.
You don't need a snowplow.
They have no services.
You don't need it.
You know what?
Just drive.
I bet I pulled a Washington driver out of a snowbank, and maybe it wasn't from Washington, but he was driving a BMW in the snow, and he drove his BMW into about like 2 to 3 inches of snow and got stuck.
Yeah, yeah, that's just dumb. Look,
dumb.
It's not even.
We got him out.
Going around, it was like the snowpocalypse. Like, everybody was like losing their minds. Like, I went to lunch. And there was 5 people in the ditch. Like, here, just a little tip, like, give yourself 3 times the amount of space it normally takes you to stop and slow down for corners. That's really it. It's not difficult, people. All right. But my regular do better, my real do better this week is for none other than the flagship network for the NFL Network. Now, being in the hotel room for the last week, I've gotten the privilege, quote unquote, to watch a lot of cable TV. And NFL Network has been my channel of choice. Now, one thing I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 days, Brandan, is you brought it up earlier in the pod, is all of the talk about how the Falcons got robbed of their win in Seattle for Julio Jones getting pass interference with by Richard Sherman towards the end of the game. Now, they always bring it up in the same way. It's time for revenge on the Seahawks because they got away with this call and blah, blah, blah. And every single time they fail to mention, even though it has been brought to their attention months and months and months ago that Julio Jones basically punched Richard Sherman in the helmet and like tried to drop him before he ran his route. That is called illegal hands to the face. You can't do that. It's illegal at best. If the officials
illegal's even in the title of the penalty.
Yeah, it's illegal. You could get ticketed for that. Unlike warming up your car, like it's illegal. Like if at best, if the officials had done their job, that is offsetting penalties in replay of down, not consequential to the outcome of the game. Just being a bunch of whiners and untrue with the facts of the situation. And on top of that, you go to like say Hawk Blogger's article about that call, like from back around week 6, and you go to click on the video of Julio smacking Richard Sherman in the face. Guess what? That video has been deleted.
What?
From NFL.com.
No.
Yes.
Come on.
They're pretending as if it never happened. This is a conspiracy theory that goes all the way to the top. We know that Roger Goodell is in on this. So to the NFL Network, and all you people that have a problem with facts, do better.
Yeah, that's bad. No, that video where they had what was it?
Because they had spliced in a different beginning of the play, from a previous play where Julio had a clean release,
right? Yeah,
and then show the pass interference
inside the NFL. That was the show that they played that on.
Yeah, and so nope, you can't even see it now from NFL.com. They've deleted that to cover their own tracks and their sensationalism this week. That's bad news, man.
It is bad news, fake news.
Yeah. It is fake news. Maybe the Ministry of Propaganda should take a look at that, the newly formed one.
All right, let's move on to Better at Life. My Better at Life this weekend My Better at Life this week is for Tyvis Powell, former Seahawk.
Yes.
Unfortunately, cut to make room for Devin Hester, our new return man.
You mean our new fair catcher?
Our new fair catcher and taking a knee in the end zoner. But Tyvis Powell, I have never seen a guy take it so well. For a guy in his rookie season, just about to go into the playoffs, has every reason to take a huge issue with the team cutting him. That could put a big chip on your shoulder. You could be a huge jerk going out the door and just say, screw you guys. I hope you lose in the playoffs. It's totally the opposite. He tweeted out afterwards, says, it's all love for the Seahawks. Are you kidding me? They gave me an opportunity to live my childhood dream. I'm forever grateful for that. 100. And then a couple days later says, if waiving me and bringing in a returner helps Seattle win the Super Bowl this year, then I'm with it. # Go Hawks.
That's a man. That's a man. And that's a man who knows that by acting like a man has a great chance to be on this roster again come the beginning of the year next year.
I hope he is too, because I'm guessing, I don't know how waivers works after, postseason. But if he's cleared waivers by now, that means that he should have the ability to at least hang on and sign with the team he chooses. And I would hope that team would be Seattle at this point. So,
yeah, or even just stick in the league. In some way. I would love it if it was back in Seattle, but I'm rooting for him wherever he goes. Like that's what a tremendous attitude. I mad respect for that guy.
Yeah, great attitude, and for that, he's my better at life than Skip Bayless this week.
Right on. My better at life for Skip Bayless this week is short and sweet, but it is for the Russian Seahawkers Club because they sent one Earl Thomas a Russian Seahawks hat that he donned on the sidelines at the last playoffs game, and it was sweet. Had ear flaps, had some fur, had like an official insignia, like on the flap that kind of sticks up on your forehead,
I love that patch that they put on there, and it had some kind of cool inscription on it too.
Yeah, it looks like Earl Thomas just stepped right off the Red October, and swaggered right in to Seahawks to the clink, man. It was super cool. What a neat thing for them to do, and not only that, but what a neat thing for Earl to go ahead and rock that on the sidelines and show his love for the fans that are halfway across the globe. I just thought it was a cool show of the way that the 12s and the players connect in the kind of community that we all live within. With one another. And for that, the Russian Seahawkers better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, apparently on the hat it said restricted airspace, no fly zone, restricted by Earl Thomas.
I like it. I like it.
Very cool. Got him noticed on Seahawks.com. It made the rounds on, I think I saw the Pro Football Talk had it posted there. So well done to our Russian 12s on getting the word out about the club and letting us know that you're over there in Russia. You're rooting on the Hawks. That's awesome.
Exactly. I mean, look, I thought it was. I saw him wearing the hat like on the side. I was like, that's a pretty sweet hat. And I knew nothing
you get the
about
story
it.
behind it, and it's
and then like 2-3 days later, I saw the headline. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Who would have thought that? That's pretty neat.
Well, Adam, before we get, it's going to be one nice thing about this weekend. The Seahawks kick off this NFL weekend. We really don't have to wait. We get the first game. It's going to be really hard, though, to enjoy the rest of the weekend of football if the Seahawks don't pull this off, though.
What rest of the weekend? Like, if that's a reality that I won't be living in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just needed that acknowledgement.
I will say this, Brandon. I will say this. Like, I've been saving up for a new motorcycle for like a couple years now.
Yeah.
And Santa, like working the Santa booth, like I got a couple extra bucks scratched together. And so I've been searching for a specific kind, and I've been looking in Montana forever. Couldn't find one. And while I was over here, I decided to pop on Craigslist, and I found one. And it happened to be the exact bike I was looking for at a crazy great price. And the people were great, and it's in great shape. I'm excited. So if the Seahawks lose, I noticed it was going to be 44 and sunny on Sunday. I'm going for a ride on the new bike. I'm going to have a good day. I'm still going to have a good day.
You're still going to have a good day. Well, let's hope that good day is even better, and we're celebrating with a victory, and not just this revenge game over some non-call, a true revenge game over what Atlanta did to these Seahawks 3 years ago in Atlanta, and just the Seahawks being that close to making an epic comeback. And this time they can go in, they can get the win in Atlanta and do something they've never done before, get a win on the road in the divisional round to send the team to an NFC championship.
I love it, man. Just one last thing to any Seahawks coach on the defensive staff that may be listening to this, because I know you all do, is no prevent. just no prevent defense, please.
We've got an upgraded pass rush from that 2012 season, too.
True fact. With especially when Chris Clemens went down in the Washington game.
Yeah, that hurt us.
Yeah.
Well, with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.